Okay, so last episode we wrapped up a mini series on free thinking and how using spiritual insights helps us calm self doubt and fear. Today we're going to move things into a different direction and we're going to start dissecting the destructive nature of self loathing. That's right, self loathing is the enemy. The longer we stay stuck in a self hate cycle, the more it crushes our self esteem and confidence. So, self loathing is also this power source that can kind of write an additional lifeline into the palm of our hand. So, if you were to like read the lines on your hand and you're like, oh, this one shows a split lifeline, it actually rewrites a different line into your figurative lifeline and it leads you down the wrong path entirely if you let it. Self hate affects many areas of our lives, it affects our mental health. There are also deeply rooted cycles that factor into this, like childhood or prior experiences, any type of trauma, the comparison trap, and the societal influences, perfectionism, our favorite thing to talk about, and negative self talk and the views that feed into this. So, in this episode, I want to drill deeper into this last one. In today's episode, you'll get insights into how self loathing kills more than our confidence. You'll hear about my own trials, errors, and breakthroughs with self hate, and you'll learn some tips to reprogram your thinking on the self love versus self hate lifestyle. So, several years ago, I was trapped in this vicious self hate, self love cycle, and there were days that it sucked the life from me. I was going through one of the worst and promising seasons of my life concurrently, and the culture clash of this had me on this emotional roller coaster. Ever feel this way? I learned a lot of life lessons during that season, some of which I want to share with you today. I hope you're encouraged with renewed insights and tips to apply to your own life that enhance your self-love walk, and in doing so, you gain better clarity on your purpose.
Do you crave better self-esteem and confidence, but struggle to silence your worry, fear, and insecurity? If you're ready to step into a life you love, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Jennifer DeBellis, award-winning author and speaker. I help women like you overcome fear and doubt to reclaim their self-worth and confidence. I can't wait to share the secrets I've learned on my own healing journey. Are you ready to restore your inner warrior? Then turn off those distractions and tune into this next episode.
Self-loathing is a form of self-poisoning. When we allow self-hate into our daily lives, we're adding this toxic ingredient that makes us physically, spiritually, and emotionally sick. Like any other illness, left untreated, or worse, left in the conditions that caused it, it can turn into disease. So every area of our life, including our overall happiness and identity, is impacted by our decision to allow self-loathing to play kind of in the background of our life as we go about our everyday business. So I want to give you a little backstory and story within a story here. I do that a lot. Sorry if that's hard to follow, but I promise there's a thread running through all these different stories. So one thing that is a part of my kind of everyday life is that God speaks to me through red-tailed hawks. And I know you might be thinking, oh my gosh, do you have a spirit animal? Yes, I have this connection with red-tailed hawks, with a lot of birds of prey, but in particular red-tailed hawks, that I can be in meditation, or I could have just recently meditated on something, and then God just kind of like shows up through these birds in really weird ways. And I'm talking about like them doing like acrobatic kind of things, or swooping, almost hitting my car on the expressway, and just this wonderfully fanned out feathers showing their great splendor. And it always gets my attention in really interesting ways. And so maybe I'll talk about my spiritual connections with that in another episode. But in this particular episode, I want to talk about one that recently triggered what I want to talk to you about today. So I was thinking about, what do I want to share with you guys today? I have so many stories about struggling with self-loathing and, coming back out of that. And I was like, gosh, which one do I narrow in on? And then I was kind of like checking my notifications this morning, and I saw a time hop that came up from 2018. So Valentine's Day, 2018, this time hop comes up, and it's a red-tailed hawk that had shown up in my backyard. I have this beautiful marsh area. I shouldn't say it's beautiful. It's a sight, but I get a lot of beautiful wildlife in this natural marsh that's in my backyard, and red-tailed hawks are one of them. And there's this female hawk that comes into my yard, and she came into the wooded area on this particular day, and the sun was just right, shining on her, and I was able to get a picture of her, and it literally looked like she was looking at me right in the house, and it's just this magnificent picture. And I was like, wow, right after I had meditated on something, here's this hawk. So this hopped up on my time hop today, and I was like, wow, like here's that hawk. This is from February of 2018, during this time when my life had just been turned upside down, and I was already kind of struggling through some kind of career and professional and creative stuff. And then I get this phone call. So I get this phone call from my oldest daughter, and she's like, are you sitting down? Are you with dad? And she drops the news on us that they discovered she has brain cancer. I know, right? Like, didn't see that coming. And I felt like my whole world was coming, crashing down on me. And, we worked through that. I wrote about that in my second poetry collection, New Wilderness. And I kind of explore a lot of the different nuances of going through the different wildernesses with her, and particularly with going through the brain cancer season of her life. And I was, there for her as much as I could be there for her. But this flood of emotions kind of came in on me, and then I started to make different life decisions. I started to change some things around in our life, and I was in this moment where I had just recently gotten the news, and I felt already like I was in this kind of self-loathing season, or this moment where, I don't want to say it was a whole season, but it was just this moment where sometimes we go through, like maybe it's a week long or 2 weeks long, where I was really starting to slide into this slump. And I was feeling like, oh my God, what the heck do I even have going for me? In this particular winter, I teach at the college level, and I wasn't teaching. I didn't have any classes that term. And I was like, what the heck am I supposed to do with my time? And how am I supposed to make money now? And so I started freelancing and getting into that a little bit more. And I was saying, okay, let me use this blessing of time to try to get some of my creative work. Like, I didn't have a book yet. And so I was like, okay, I went to a conference. I was out there selling myself, marketing myself, believing. I already knew God had made promises to me. And so I was like, okay, I've got to get out there. I've got to do the work. So, okay, so I'm not teaching right now. Look at it as a blessing and figure some things out. But in all of that, I crossed paths with someone. And sometimes this will happen to us, where we cross paths with someone right at a time where we're already in that slump, and then they say something. They're like the devil's advocate. They say something, and it just, right? It just stabs us and just twists the knife in. And I had one of those moments where I was at a party. I was at a house party, and there were a lot of young adults there in early 20s and mid 20s. And this guy who I had known, a friend of a family member, I'd known him for a few years. He'd been around in the picture in the friend group, and he's talking to me like, what are you doing? And I'm telling him, I'm a writer, I do freelance work, I teach the college level. And he just literally is like, are you an idiot? I mean, this is like a 25, 26-year-old guy. He's like, what are you, an idiot? You can't make money being an adjunct teacher. You can't make money being a writer. And he's like, why didn't you, continue going into engineering? And he had just graduated from college, and he was in his first year as working as an engineer at a firm. And he was like, oh, I'm on the fast track. I'm going to be making 6 figures in less than 5 years. And he's like giving me this whole portfolio. And long story short, it just really listened to that. It was like starting to crush like all of this stuff that I had goals, and I was working toward those goals, and I knew what my purpose was. And, just within this 10-15 minute conversation, I started to feel those walls start to crumble down. And I was just like, what, am I an idiot for pursuing these things? And yes, you're right. I'm probably not going to be on the fast track to making, 6 and 7 figures in the next couple of years. But is that the whole reason for living? And sometimes our purpose brings us in different areas, and all those things come together eventually. And so I was like, I just walked away from that feeling like an all-time low, starting to question, like, what am I doing? Maybe I should jump tracks here and get a clue, like he was saying, get a clue, do it while you can. I have a family who's relying on me. At this time, I still had two daughters living at home. They were in school, and my husband, and I'm just like, okay, maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe I'm trying to think this. And then
So I just want to hop in here for a moment and mention that I'm now accepting one-on-one coaching clients. So if you're ready to get clarity and big picture vision on your goals, consider booking a session with me today. Find a link to book your session in the show notes below.
as I was thinking about that and I'm meditating on it, and like God's reminding me of all these different promises, and he has a path for me, and it's very specific, and he will take care of me and all these different things. So I kind of felt like a little bit encouraged, and I'm sitting there thinking, what do I do now in a moment of self-love for myself and for my family? And I was like, we're going to take a trip. So it was a milestone birthday for all of them. So I'm like, we're going to take a trip because this might be the last time. This is right before my oldest daughter has brain surgery. So this might be the last time that we ever get to all go on a big family trip. So we hadn't taken one in forever. And I was like, money comes, money goes. We're going to spend some of the money that we have set aside to do this. Sometimes we have money set aside and we have to invest it to go and create those memories and do those things. So I was like, we're going to use this money that I couldn't totally justify in my heart. Like I kind of felt conflicted. Like, should I use this money? Because it's kind of like a nest egg, or, should we go and do this thing? And so we went on this trip right before she went in for brain surgery. And then we came back from that trip, and I immediately went home right with her because her surgery was that next week. And so we were doing a lot of things to prepare for the surgery, and she was in another state. So we went back to Virginia. We live in Michigan. And so we went back to Virginia, and that's where I stayed with her. And my journey as caregiver began at that moment. And so once this journey began, I started dealing with a worse version of my daughter than her teenage self. And that was really triggering, and that was really difficult. And it flooded me with a lot of old trauma, a lot of things that you can't really resolve, that you just have to be like, I'm going to make peace with that because raising teenagers is really tough. And as I spent this time with her, at the time I didn't really recognize where all these emotions coming from. I didn't recognize that there was some things going on with her frontal lobe, and that was also causing her to kind of have some of these relapses. And we're just there trying to survive and trying to get through it, the two of us. And we've never been through anything like this as a family. So she and I are just feeling our way through it. And I'm there, and she doesn't want me to be there. And I'm living in, just to put it in perspective, she lives in an apartment. She has two roommates, and there's this 5x7 closet. It's like a little storage room, but it has a window. So I got blessed with a 5x7 storage room with a window. And so there's like one whole wall that has like their storage and boxes and suitcases and things that are theirs, the three different roommates. And then I get this inflatable mattress bed, and there's like my daughter's desk is in there. So like I make do. And I'm like, thank God I have this space to go and retreat to. But again, I'm living in a 5x7 closet, just to put it in perspective. And I'm making it work, and I'm going through these emotional roller coasters with her, and she's really agitated and she's angry, and I get it. She's angry and I'm there, and so she's taking it out on me because she can't take it out on anyone else. And I start to fall deeper and deeper into this kind of like self-loathing, because I start to think about, have I failed her? What are the ways that I failed her? And then I have these negative thoughts about my current condition. I'm like, I'm living in a 5x7 closet, even though like I know I have a real home back in Michigan. But here I am right now. I've been reduced to this 5x7 room, and sometimes those walls start to close in on you, and you start to forget about the larger world and picture outside of that 5x7 space. And so I had just spent this money for my savings, and I'm like, oh my God, are we going to be okay? Because I'm here. And looking back, there's a lot of things like I was like, well, I'm blessed that I wasn't teaching this term, because now I'm able to be here with her. And I ended up spending, over the course of 2 visits, 2 months with her. So it was a considerable amount of time that I was able to be there and be like a caretaker for her. And that was huge, because then someone was there and making sure she ate, and making sure on the days she didn't feel like getting up, that someone could get her up and help get her cleaned up and motivated. And she was still working, and so going into the hospital to cover a shift and picking up shifts and all the things that she was going through. But again, I was there to be a help where I could be a help, and running after errands for her. When she would be too sick, I'd have to help her into the car and take her to chemo and radiation and all those things. So blessed to be there. But I'm there and I'm away from my everyday life and I'm just kind of wallowing in the fact that I have nothing really huge lined up for me and it just starts to overwhelm me and I'm looking out on the horizon. I don't have a lot of things going for me. And so then like all this is playing in the background and I'm trying to deal through that for the first few days that we're back from the trip. And this chain of events happened that led to an epiphany moment for me. And this is when my survival instincts reminded me of the power of self-love and knowing my purpose. So she had a movie night with her roommates. So their two roommates had boyfriends. So everybody's over and they had just eaten. I don't know what I had been gone. So I may have gone to church or something with my aunt and uncle who also live in Virginia. And I come back in and they're kind of already hanging out, having a good time, whatever. And they're about to put a movie on. And I was like, oh, what are we going to watch? And my daughter just like was just awful to me in that moment. She's like, you're not watching the movie with us. And I was just like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't have a TV in my room. Not that I watch a lot of TV, but I'm seriously like, what am I supposed to do? This is a small apartment. You have people over. And she just, in that moment, she started to get like kind of aggressive about like, you're like, these are my friends. These are my roommates. And so then I was like, okay, I'm going to remove myself. Not because I didn't deserve to like stand up and fight, but what's the point? Am I going to make a big scene about it? And then she goes off to her room and now I'm stuck with these two roommates and their boyfriends, like awkward. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to remove myself from the situation. I'm going to go and hide out in my 5x7 little room, and which is right next door to this TV. So I can hear it going. And I have this moment where I call my husband and I might have talked to someone else. And I kind of like go through, like, I was devastated in this moment. I was kind of going through some grief. And I was overwhelmed with some of these grief stages. Like, I was really angry at first. Like, I felt like, how dare you treat me that way? And then I felt like really disappointed and like, why? Like, that's kind of like something that I might have expected from her when she was a teenager and her friends came over to play, I don't know, rock band in the basement or something. And I'm like, oh, I want to play. I'm really good at the drums. And she's like, Mom, get out of here. But I wasn't expecting it from her at this point. And this whole, relapse that she was having, which got worse after the brain surgery, was a whole new wilderness and a whole new world. And it was kind of devastating. But anyhow, I'm going through these, emotions, the shame, the pain, and this hopelessness starts to like crush me. And I started thinking like all of these self-loathing thoughts. And at some point I just like cried out to God and I'm like, like, how am I in this dead end place? Like, how did I get here? And where do I go from here? And I just started like having that and I was crying. And of course I was kind of upset. And sometimes, you get upset and you really can't hear anything. Even if somebody's giving you all the answers, you can't hear past your own grief. Sometimes you need to like just cry it out. And then I fell asleep. So now I wake up the next day, and this is a kind of a big day. I won't get ahead of myself. This is kind of a big day. So I'm like, all right, before we do what I'm about to share with you, I'm like, let me go for a walk. Let me clear my head. And that's like a self-love thing for me. So physical fitness and getting out and getting fresh air is a thing that I do to invest in myself. It's just a self-love act. You need to do it. Not only do we need the physical outlet, like I spiritually need the physical outlet, I emotionally also do, on top of the physical benefits. So I head out. She lives at the top of this mountain in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So I head out on this walk. I have this beautiful path that I would go on, and I'm like walking. And when I first started out, I kind of woke up like, just filled with so much hate. And I hated myself the most in the whole situation. So I go on this walk and I'm like, I need to clear my head. I need I need to shake this off. I started meditating then on my goals and my desired outcomes. Like right away, I was like, okay, part of clearing my head is to get clear on a few things here. So let me sift through, let me get clear on a few things here. So I start sifting through that. I began to recall my purpose in each one of these negative thoughts that I had. So like going back to that, I knew I was called to teach. I just didn't know exactly what capacity I was called to teach in at that time. I had made peace with spending that money and investing it in these important relationship interactions. And I recalled God's promises to me that I would become a published author and that I was doing the important work to fulfill that goal. I also, like I mentioned before, rationalized my living situation was temporary. I really didn't live in a 5x7 closet. as I'm walking and I'm sifting through all this stuff and I'm realigning my focus on the things that it needs to be on and kind of like challenging, coming up against these thoughts and challenging them, a pair of red-tailed hawks flies across the path. Like I'm walking, they fly into my space. Not like, oh, I see them off in the distance. They fly into my space, a pair, not just one, two. And it was two females. So that's not a thing. It was actually mating season, so I may have been like, okay, I can justify seeing a pair of red-tailed hawks because it is mating season. They come together. Otherwise, they're kind of solitary birds. They're kind of loners. And so I'm like, okay, here's these two beautiful red-tailed hawks. The females are larger. They're more colorful. So in the bird world, that's like a big deal. You can tell that it's the female. So that's like a big deal because usually the male birds are the ones that have the better color and they're a little bit larger. And so anyhow, these two hawks come into the path and they're just kind of watching me because I'm circling around this pond and they're kind of watching me and I'm kind of taking them in and I'm like, wow, they're pretty close. And here they are in this space right when I am finally drilling in to remembering and reminding myself about my goals and my desired outcomes and what my purpose is in each one of these different areas that I was doubting in. And there were a lot of different areas. I'm just naming a few of them. There were a lot of areas. And then I felt like, okay, I haven't resolved everything, but I felt like, okay, hopeful again, that hope was returning. So now I go back to my daughter's apartment where she is just getting up and we have got to go through her advance directive. And we've got to go through this big, long document that took us hours to get through because I am her person. If something goes wrong, she wants me to know what decisions to make. Like she wants me to honor what she wishes. And so she's got to get through this. And I'm just dreading it. And I'm kind of still a little bit irritated with how she treated me the night before. And we haven't talked about that because we're just getting right into business. But I'm like, that's all right. Forgive, move on. We'll come back and we'll talk about these things. But right now is not the time. We really need to use this time to get through this because she also had one more shift of work that she had to go to before she was going in for the surgery. So now we're going through everything and we're at the part where she's telling me, this is what I want you to do. If I lose brain activity, do not just put me in a coma and keep me alive if I'm not really alive. And I'm just like, oh, so I'm kind of like starting to act a little bit flaky in that moment. And she's like, Mom, I need you to focus. I'm trying to tell you something super important. It was like, all of a sudden she was like, nope, I need to adult here. And you need to adult with me. And I was like, okay, you're right. Let me focus. And she's going through that. We just get through all of that. And she's telling me something else. And then my wrist goes off with a notification on my watch. And I'm like, and then I read it and I'm like, oh my God. And she's like, she kind of is like starting to get mad at me because she's like, I need you to focus here. And I was like, hang on, can you just pause for 1 second? Because I think I just got a book deal. And she's like, what? And I'm like, wait. I'm like, yeah, I got to sit down. I think I just got a book deal. And so I'm like, I got to get my laptop out. I got to open this up. And so sure enough, I get this email for the publisher of my first book. And he's like, I would love to publish your book. And so it was like this moment where all of these really challenging things were in front of us and we're dealing with it and we're preparing for the storm ahead. And then this comes in, this promising, this hope fulfilled kind of a thing comes in. And it was like, okay, this is how life works. You know, what it's like the yin and yang of life. And I was like blown away, and she was too. And she actually got up and we were celebrating the moment and just kind of jumping around like little kids because my kids have been also rooting for me to get these book deals. And so it was like seeing this come together, seeing that dream become a reality, even in the midst of all of this tough stuff that we were trying to get through, was incredible. And what was really important was that I entered into this afternoon with a perspective shift. So I knew that things were going to be okay even before I got that email. I had that peace. I was like, okay, you've shown me, God, that I have a future with my children. You've already told me, like, she's going to come through this. And so I was like, I have to believe these things and I have to be present. I have to show up. I have to lock in. I have to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm the one who was able to come here. Now I have to be here and I have to be fully present and I have to do what I signed up to do, which is pretty much anything she tells me to do right now that she needs me to do. And so I was like, readjust your thinking, remember your purpose, remember why you're here, remember those outcomes that we're both after, and remember that everything's going to be okay. And I had that perspective shift the moment I did one self-love act, which was just going for the walk. And I remained in that spiritual meditation, which is kind of how I do that as well. So it's like this self-love that helps me, like body, spirit, mind. I know I talked about that in other episodes, but like I do multiple things at the same time. I look for workouts that I'm using, weights, free weights, with also like calisthenic types of exercises, because I'm always like, I only have 20 minutes. I need to make the most of it. I need to bring things together that are harmonious. And so walking for me and getting alone in meditation in my spiritual place with God is like this. It's easy. It's easy to slip into those and do that multitasking because it doesn't require me to like only be half present for this thing in order to be fully present for this thing. So I often pair those things and find that my life is far more enriched because now I have the time to do both of those things when my life kind of sometimes gets a little bit chaotic and overbooked. But that perspective shift actually manifested those promises being fulfilled. So a side note here is remember, overcoming self-loathing isn't the destination, but rather it's a controllable part of the journey. So when we live with purpose and stay on track on our journey to achieve our goals, we must regularly self-assess and break down the plans that we have to reach our desired outcomes. So I just walked you through how I did that. That in itself is also an act of self-love. It's also good stewardship over our big picture vision for our life. So the enemy comes in to rob, kill, and destroy. But often he just uses the easiest method, which is distraction. He'll distract you when he can't destroy you, and it slowly destroys you anyway. And you kind of don't see it coming. You might see something really obvious, some really big present danger coming. You might be like, oh, right, escape that. But when you don't see it coming and don't feel it, kind of like a drum beat and playing in the background, it's slowly poisoning and killing your life, keeping you off track. And next thing you know, you're completely at a different destination altogether. So self-hate keeps us hyper-focused on the negative. So that's how it becomes this distraction. It keeps us hyper-focused on the negative and often untrue things about ourselves and the situation. It distracts us from staying focused on those goals and doing what we need to achieve them. So carve out a small space when you find yourself in these situations where self-loathing is creeping up to work through some things. Go ahead and grieve. Grief is super important. I was just talking with my middle daughter about this yesterday, and she was saying like she was going through something a little bit ago. She was like, yeah, I was kind of like working through the self-loathing and it was important to do it. And now I'm on the other side of it. And I thought, what a good thing. Here I was meditating on what I wanted to talk to you about today. And I'm like, yes, that is so important. It's so true. I talk about it in Warrior Sister Cut Yourself Free, my self-help book, that it's super important for us to go through the grieving process because otherwise the temptation is to just bury things, and things do not stay buried. Something else is going to come and it's going to trigger that and it's going to bring it back to the surface and continually wreak havoc, and it will come back and it'll come back larger and larger and larger until it's this big volcano that's erupting, and then it's taking things down in its path. And so we have to work through that grief that's attached to the self-loathing and all the disappointment and all those different emotions. And then we need to purge it. So we need to purge those out of our internal space. Because again, if we keep them in there and we bury them down again and we shove them in the back of something, we're going to stumble upon it again. It's going to come back up and it's going to be ugly every single time. We don't always work all the way through something also. So again, don't beat yourself up when maybe something does come back up and creep back up and you're like, oh God, I really didn't go through the full process here. Again, carve out the space, go through those types of things, and then come back and do the important work of breaking down and remembering, what's the path I'm on? What are the things that are supposed to be on this path? What am I supposed to be doing? What am I after here? And there isn't just one life goal. We don't just have one purpose, one life goal. I give you a few as examples because we're multifaceted individuals and we have different roles that we play in different relationships and different maybe partnerships, maybe, or like professional or creative outlets. And we inhabit those spaces entirely different. So our goal set could be radically different. And if you just try to like pull out what are all the little things I have to do to achieve this goal in this role, and then what do I have to do to achieve this goal, you might be like, am I talking about the same person here? So we have to keep that in perspective, is we have to sit and figure out like, what am I supposed to be doing in this particular case, and work through that and look at the larger picture and then get back on track. And then we know exactly where we got off track because we're looking at it. And then we can say, okay, and forgive ourselves, walk in grace. So if we did screw some things up or wander off the path, maybe we wandered really far off the path. It's okay. As long as you have a breath left in you, you'll always be able to come back, to just keep finding your way back to getting back on the right path. And so we have to allow ourselves to go through that process as well. So in closing, the ultimate takeaway here is that we cannot serve two masters. We cannot maintain our emotional well-being and thrive if we allow self-hate to rule our lives. You can't have them. I don't want to say they're opposite, like love is opposite than hate, but they're two distinct beasts. You cannot thrive in self-love if self-hate is dominating your life. You won't even hear the self-love. It doesn't mean that you won't have moments of it. We don't want moments of it. We want to live our best life. We want to thrive. And so when we want to thrive, again, that's a goal, that's a desired outcome. We have to figure out what is it that we have to do in order to make that happen. And then we have to protect that. So we have to be really intentional about protecting our self-love. And in order to do that, we kind of have to know, what are we doing to cultivate this self-love walk? What are we doing to nurture it? Those are all things that we have to be aware of. So not just being aware of what is my purpose or what is my goal or my intended outcomes, we also have to be aware of that as well. Interestingly, these all speak to our relationship with ourself, which is the baseline for every other relationship that we have. So if you don't know how to love yourself and to protect that love, you can't love others. You can't give somebody something else that you don't know how to do for yourself. It just doesn't work that way. So we first learn to love by learning to love ourselves. This creates an interesting connection between the spiritual practices to love others as we love ourselves and to love God above all. So next episode, we'll go beneath the surface of this love triangle and how vital our self-love walk is to every aspect of our existence.
Well, girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, follow my channel and share it with friends who also want to restore their self-worth and confidence. And if you're ready to get clarity and big picture vision on your goals, consider booking a one-on-one coaching session with me. Find a link in the show notes below to book a session. And as you go through your week, may your empowered spirit, heart, and mind guide you. Catch new episodes every Saturday. Ciao.